Hello Naughty Steppers, I hope you're doing very well. Now before I get into the meat of this video, I just want to say a massive thanks to all of you for the feedback on my last video, 10 amazing lesser known dubstep tracks volume 1, which I will link just there. Honestly, I had so much fun making it, so to see the good response made it really worthwhile at the same time. And yeah, there are going to be many more of those in the future, as I said in the video, so be sure to look out for them when they come along. Also, a quick thanks for your feedback on the setup of these videos. I think I'm going to be moving into this room permanently for the filming now. So yeah, thank you for letting me know that you preferred this for the most part. And yeah, onwards and upwards. And so on with the substance of this video, and I realised whilst writing this review that it had been a few videos since I had covered a dubstep EP. Relatively speaking, you know. And today's video is one that I've been waiting eagerly to do ever since I found out about its release a few weeks ago. And so it is with pleasure that I'm going to be talking about the new Dr. OZI EP released on Never Say Die Records, Vital. Now for any of you who have been watching this channel from the start at the end of last year, you will know that I put Dr. OZI's last EP, Blueprint, as my favourite of 2017. Something that I was all too happy to do, not only because for me it was the outright best in terms of the ambition of its ideas and the amalgamation of such a huge wealth of varied sounds, but also because it just wasn't given anywhere near as much time and attention as EPs from the likes of Zomboy, Virtual Riot and several others. It verged on the epic, covering an array of emotions across the 6 tracks and really going the extra mile in terms of its sound design and structure throughout. But now Mr. OZI, Toronto-based, is back with his first multi-track project since that absolute belter. Now going into this, whilst I was certainly excited for it coming off the back of that triumph, there was also an extent to which I thought it would be incredibly difficult for him to live up to that set standard. And when I say any way, I mean through sound design, structure, ideas, let alone making them all cohere together, as was the case in Blueprint. I also remembered how I didn't like his style too much prior to Blueprint, barring a few stellar tracks. So that also lingered in my mind as a possible direction for him to take, back towards that past stuff that I wasn't too keen on. And to be honest, I think Vital leans more towards that style, as OZI brings his production down to earth with a more simply structured and straightforward collection of tracks. There's more of an emphasis in this EP on toning everything down, not making as much of a statement, just cracking on with the introduction, build up and drop format. It's bereft of the same cinematic essence that made Blueprint so appealing, each song being relatively formulaic in terms of its ambition and purpose. The drops, which are a bit of a mixed bag, are a good representation of this. Not reaching too far by way of going off in different directions, or taking the listener by surprise if you will, whilst also possessing a multitude of quite dreary sounds that fail to really wow even with multiple listens. In the first track, Take You There, he shows ambition enough to change up the second drop from the first one, but the sounds themselves are quite sapping, leaving a lot to be desired. I also wasn't too big on the initial sounds used in the second main drop of the title track, which drag a little, detracting somewhat from the effects used in the original drop, which in my opinion are brilliant, conjuring the image of a huge beast chomping away at something in its wake. I also love the drop of the fourth track, Don't Stop, which starts entirely dark, proceeding to become electrified as it progresses. I really enjoyed the stop-start nature of this track, introduced at first in the break just before the drop is unleashed, where everything seems to stop, creating this beautiful momentary tableau effect. All the while maintaining that staggered approach that actually plays a pretty significant part in this EP overall, having its say in the second drop of the first track and the first drop of the second track. Oi oi. Whilst also being present in those monstrous bites of the title track, as if this creature is catching up on its devouring, getting ahead of itself somewhat. I also found the drops in BLT to be some of the liveliest and most captivating on the EP. However, they come out of nowhere with hardly any build towards them, apart from Magmag's insistent and fierce vocal, which is just one amongst a plethora of interesting directions that OZI takes across these 4 tracks. Like the really brief midsection in the title track starting at 1 minute 17, which hints at the epic with its huge drums and emphasis on the lead melody, that I feel could have been built on to give it that grander feel, providing more of an arch to the story that it's trying to create. One of the avenues this EP goes down that I really enjoyed comes at the end, where the track Don't Stop becomes increasingly bare as it draws to its close. A nice way of breaking down that song and the EP as a whole as the finale nears, with those fading ticks in the last seconds, rounding off the project right good. Cheeky little ironic twist there with the name of that song too. Beyond that, there are a multitude of brilliant snippets in Vital that must be noted on in this analysis. Sticking with the fourth and final track, the introduction is managed perfectly here, with a lovely selection of different drums and tempos. Working backwards to the title track, and once again the introduction here is notably on point. A classically intriguing Dr. OZI opening sequence with that scratchy and muffled sound that he has become recognisable for in the last few years, and struggling vocal noises that are always searching for something more. Undoubtedly one of the elements of his production style that I love him for. On BLT, the combination of the pans and pots noises with the underlying jumpy notes works very well. Not to mention the jabbing effect of the first drop, which in itself is a very riveting, captivating and vigorous aesthetic. The second drop also having a great energy to it, bringing together tribal drums and bird noises and growls. And finally, the harmonious and orchestral feel of the first track, with the coherence between sounds ringing true the further it goes along, enhanced by its repetition. But in spite of these really juicy individual moments that remind us how good Dr. OZI can be as a producer, none of the tracks in their entirety really throw me off my seat in comparison to some of his past stuff. The third and fourth tracks come close to accessing the epic, that which I've come to know him for in recent songs. But for the most part I feel like this EP falls short in that respect, opting instead for the more contained and held back approach that I talked of earlier. As you will have noticed here, there's been quite a lot of comparison with his last EP, something inescapable considering just how good it was. Blueprint repeatedly fires off into any pocket of space that it can find, bringing new life into the project with pretty much every step that it takes. I'd actually go as far as calling it one of the best dubstep EPs of all time. But the desire of Vital seems to be to keep to itself a little more, with 4 solid, tightly structured dubstep tracks as opposed to the free spirit vibe undertaken previously. And I'm not implying that OZI is taking a backward step here. He probably needed a heavy breather after working through the helter-skelter EP that Blueprint is. But it is interesting to me the way that he hardly builds on that wildness here. The tracks are completely different in everything that they give off, as it were. And this is the paradox of creating game-changing art. It exists as something incredible in and of itself, yet simultaneously sets an incredibly high standard for everything that follows it. This doesn't take away from what Vital is as a piece of work. It has its own space and style, and is actually evidence of how Dr. OZI can approach music production in different ways. And look, he is still one of my favourite artists out there at the moment. I love his sounds, the weight of them, the interaction between all of his effects, the willingness to change things up in his songs, and he now clearly has several styles and moods that he can fit his production into, and that for me marks the truly good musician. And I will always really look forward to everything that he puts out. There's a definite uniqueness to his sound that I don't think a lot of producers in this game could say they possess. Now in terms of a favourite from Vital, I would have to go with either the title track or Don't Stop for opposite reasons. The former for me is the closest we get to OZI's more manic and liberated method of production, whereas the latter best represents the more controlled version of his style that permeates this EP throughout. And if you enjoyed this EP and would like some recommendations for similar sounding stuff, then I would definitely check out Excision, The Frim and AFK. And so that brings my review of the new Dr. OZI EP, Vital, released on Never Say Die Records, to a close. Thank you very much, once again, and as always, for watching. Like this video, share it about, subscribe to the channel down to the right there, and leave a comment with your thoughts on Vital. What did you guys make of it? Next to my head there should be some reviews of other Never Say Die releases, including the last dubstep EP review I did on Adair's Friendly Fire. Before you leave, don't forget to like and follow Nawtystep across all social media if you haven't already, with everything linked, including those recommendations, in the description box down below. And if it's naughty, then you know guys, so be sure, as always, to keep it naughty and stay safe. And I shall see you in the next one. Peace out.